So progressive overload is what is required to build muscle and strength. It basically means progressing your training or making it harder over time. So once a new training stimulus is put into place, this will disrupt your body and disrupt homeostasis, and eventually your body will adapt to this new stimulus. Therefore, to build more muscle and more strength, we need to keep progressing our training and making it harder. If you just stick to the same stimulus, then your body has no reason to adapt, and therefore you'll just stay in the same place and not progress. So how do we actually progress in our own training? So we have to manipulate some variables, and here's how we do that. So these are the different ways to progressively overload. The first one is by increasing your load, which is through your reps and your sets. For hypertrophy, you can train through a spectrum of rep ranges, provided the sets are taken close to failure. I would suggest for hypertrophy, sticking in the 6 to 30 rep range. The second way is to increase your volume, which also is through your reps and your sets. It's the total number of sets per muscle group or per lift each week. So next is frequency, which is how many times you hit a muscle group a week or how you spread out your volume throughout the week. Fourth is intensity. So basically by training close to failure, and then you can increase the intensity even more by going past technical failure through drop sets, static hold, rest pauses, negatives, and partial reps. Then we also have density, meaning how much work you can do in a certain amount of time. And finally is efficiency. So better form, control, and slower tempo. Let's get into the first one, which is increasing your reps or increasing your load over time. So I'm going to give an example of a 3-week period with standard sets of 3. Now over time with the same weight, you can see that there is a small progression in the number of reps that is being performed. When to increase the weight will depend on the program and the individual, and this is where it can get a little bit complicated. I would generally increase the weight once you can get 12 to 15 reps with perfect form, meaning a 2 to 3 second eccentric and a 1 second concentric. But again, this depends on the program and if you are changing other variables as well. The second way is to increase your volume. So let's take a beginner as an example. Say they are doing 8 working sets per muscle group per week. Now, if they want to increase the volume, then they'd increase the number of sets or the number of reps. So let's take an example of a 12-week period of increasing the number of sets. So every 3 weeks, they add an extra set per muscle group. So by the end of the 12-week period, they would have an additional 4 sets per muscle group, meaning that they will be now doing 12 sets per muscle group per week. This can be changed depending on if you have a lagging body part, and it's a very good way to bring up those lagging body parts by increasing your volume over a specific amount of time. Just know that you cannot keep increasing the volume over time, as there will come a point where you'll be overtraining and where you'll be doing more harm than good. This will generally be at the point of doing 24 plus sets of a muscle group per week. For me, that's overkill. So it's vital to include deload and rest periods once you have increased your volume to the max without it disrupting muscle growth. The next variable is frequency. Now this is the amount of times you hit a muscle group per week or how you allocate the volume to that muscle group. For example, I used to train one muscle group per day doing around 12 to 14 sets, meaning that I would only hit that muscle group once a week. So to increase frequency, I changed from hitting every muscle group once per week to twice per week for my next phase of training. So instead of doing 12 to 14 sets once per week, I would split it up to 6 to 7 sets twice per week. This way, the muscle has a new adaptation and forcing it to grow by hitting it more often. So the fourth way is by increasing intensity. Now, as a beginner, I would not recommend training to failure. In fact, you should probably stop 2 to 3 reps shy of failure, and that's because as you get more training time under your belt, then you can start training closer and closer to failure, and that way you're going to increase the intensity and you're going to keep your muscles adapting to a new stimulus. So there will come a point in time where you do train to failure and your muscles require more stimulus, and this is where partial reps, rest pauses, slow negatives all come into play. For example, on the final set of each exercise, you can include partial reps just to take your muscles past the point of technical failure, and this is how you're going to force them to grow. You can also include things like drop sets, rest pauses, which are also going to force your muscles to grow. So partial reps I would suggest doing are long length partials, and these are partial reps from a fully stretched position to the mid portion of the movement. Drop sets are extra sets added by a drop in weight. For example, if I'm doing a chest press, I would do 10 reps of my normal weight, then decrease the weight by 50 to 60% and do an additional set to fatigue the muscle. Negatives are the eccentric portion of the exercise once you cannot complete a concentric rep. This works well with exercises like skull crushers. Rest pauses are when you rest the weight after each rep. Now it's worth noting I wouldn't include all of these into your program all at once. For best results, you want to rotate between each one in different cycles of your program. So the next variable is density. This is basically how much work you can do in a certain amount of time. So this one I don't really focus on too much because to increase density, you have to reduce your rest time between sets and between exercises, which is something I don't agree with, especially if you're trying to get stronger. The less time you rest, the less time your muscles have to recover in between sets, and therefore they will get fatigued much faster, and you won't be able to maximize the amount of reps you can do per set. I always say to people the ultimate goal is to get stronger over time, so I really wouldn't focus on this too much. And the final variable we can change is efficiency, which is form, control, and tempo. So your form should always be full range of motion regardless to get the most out of the exercise. I don't agree with doing these half reps unless you're doing partials at the end of a set. Your control should actually be getting better the more experience you have and the more you train. If you want to have more control, then you should focus on slowing down the movement, reduce your tempo in each set, and focus on the mind-muscle connection. So I would suggest to slow down the eccentric portions so your body can really focus on the lowering phase. By slowing down this phase, you're going to optimize your muscle building potential. A good baseline would be to start with a 2 to 3 second eccentric, and you can also add in a 1 second pause at the bottom with a 1 to 2 second concentric. So as your muscles adapt and get used to this new stimuli, then you can start slowing down the tempo even more on certain exercises by increasing the eccentric portion to 5 or 10 seconds. And this is going to help give your muscles a new stimulus to force growth. So guys, hope this video helps give you an idea on how progressive overload works and the variables that you need to change on a regular basis to stimulate muscle growth, force adaptation, so you can get the best results possible. If you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, then smash the like button. If you're new to the channel, then hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notifications, because I'm going to be releasing 2 new videos every single week just like this, and you don't want to miss them. And if you want to see the 10 common mistakes majority of beginners make when they start their fitness journey and how you can avoid them, then I recommend watching this video next. And remember, stay natty, stay clean, and peace.